The sleeping giant of Super League snores and snoozes still. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome along to the Rovers Rant podcast, where we discuss everything Robins related, everything red and white, and much else besides in the Super League world. And what screams a bigger club louder than dressing in ball sack pink, in scrotum pink, in gooch pink? I'm not much of a style expert. I'm not very sartorial or indeed very artistic in an aesthetic or colour-based sense. But I would like to know just who is responsible for the abomination of the Hull FC kit. They are naked from 400 yards. Frankly, that was absolutely right. I don't know who the hell signed off on that strip, but whoever did, they, like Mr. Cartwright, could probably do with the sack. Yes, last night at the DIY Kitchen Stadium, to everybody's infinite satisfaction and enthusiasm, the Wakefield Trinity beat Hull FC by 14 points to 10. And this, I suppose, will be a rundown of what happened, how it was won, how it was lost, who was integral to the respective win and the respective loss, and where either side will go. But it was a scrappy affair, fought between two teams who I think have a very, very low ceiling in 2026. I didn't see a great deal of germinating talent. I didn't see much genius in the cradle. I didn't see, I didn't sense that either side will progress much from the shite that they served up last night. But anyway, let's get on. It began quite well for Hull FC. Wakefield seemed determined to lose the match. Daryl Powell, their coach Daryl Powell's head seemed perpetually to be in his hands. Whether that was Mike McMeekin scrapping with Brad Fash when Fash wouldn't let go, hammering him in the neck, or whether that was just random dropsies or laying on long after the referee had called hell. You really did feel the vicarious pain of Daryl Powell as his side self-sabotaged. And FC looked deadly in front of the line. Of course, it was John Asiata, the number 13, who only plays 50 to 55 minutes, which are low numbers for a loose forward. But there we are. It was he with his dual threat, his ball handling skills, but his physical presence at the same time. That was, which means that the Wakefield defence has to, suck more men in and has to contribute much more to the handling of him. Dips it over to Caesar, who dips it over to Romano, who turns out has a hell of a fend on him, who dips it out to Lewis Martin, who basically rambles in unopposed. And you felt at the moment that Hull FC could probably have scored 4 or 5 more tries like that if Wakefield had continued in that vein. And then we must turn to Davy Litten, who everybody knows should not have been playing at fullback. It's become sort of a popular talking point that, Hull FC have in their squad a capable fullback who has, I think, won a good few trophies with a good few teams in that position, with the Leeds Rhinos and the Wigan Warriors. Zach Hardacre is, to my mind anyway, the most capable candidate in that position, and yet Cartwright seems hell-bent on having Litten there and keeping Hardacre in the centres, which means that whether it's Jake Truman or, in future rounds, Mark Sneed or Harry Smith, it means that Davy Litten is going to be bombed to high hell. It means that he is going to be Coventry in 1941, okay? He is going to be singed with the heaven-sent high kicks of whichever person is playing 6 or 7 on the opposing team, because he cannot catch. He is visibly flustered and visibly uncomfortable and cannot be relied upon by anybody supporting the black and whites to take hold of the ball, okay? Every time one comes down with snow on it from the heavens, you know that Davy Litten has a 50% chance of buggering it up. And that is excellent from our standpoint, but if you're supporting the idiots, then I can imagine that it really does it really does tarnish matters and upset matters. So, yeah, Davy Litten dropped a few, which put Hull FC under pressure. And then Will Tate goes in the corner to level it up for Wakefield. Again, just for a minor bit of trivia, I once again played against Will Tate when he was playing for the Cottingham Tigers. He then went on to Skirler Bulls. He was, by some distance, the best player on the pitch. He was a sort of one of those deceptively strong half-backs. He had all the skills in the book, but then he could also completely lay you out as well if he wanted to. And it's a shame that he's been sort of bunged on the wing by Rovers and by Castleford and now by Wakefield. It seems to be that he can't play what I think is probably his natural position. His body composition has changed slightly, but anyway, he's now set to be one of Trinity's top try scorers on the flanks. And then we had something of an equal game, really. Neither side wanting to take a stranglehold, shooting themselves in the foot and whatnot. But Hull FC get another try, essentially identical to the first one. Romano looks a really devilishly difficult centre to handle and to tackle. He always seems to bounce off. He always invites second and third contact. And Hull FC get another one. And my eyes were sort of turning towards the floor at that point. I thought FC had a chance to sort of to run away with it. Wakefield keep barfing up opportunities. McMeekan, as I've already mentioned, smashing Brad Fash in the face, but then again, who wouldn't? Sort of even towards the half, and then just as you think that Hull FC are going to go in the sheds with the lead, Truman sends one up into the air again. Litten isn't even within 5 metres of it when it lands, and it goes perfectly into a Wakefield man's hands, and they ground it to be level at half time. And then in the second half, Hull FC simply didn't turn up. They were rarely in the Wakefield half, and whenever they were in the Wakefield half, you could rely on Jake Arthur to send it unbouncing into row T, to balls it up for his whole team. Jake Arthur, it is fair to say, has been a massive disappointment for Hull FC. He's not going to be the glorious half-back partner of Aidan Caesar that he was muted as. I don't know what the problem is, but he can't really tackle. He gives away an awful lot in defence by either laying on, he drops a few balls, doesn't seem to kick the ball into the right area. And so from a Robbins perspective, he might be our new favourite player for 2026. The Rapana of this season, maybe. He was gloriously bad. And then, in the second half, it didn't really get much better for Hull FC. Arthur still kicking it out on the full. Jake Truman was a minx in attack, and he was the one who was, inviting second and third tackles. He was the one orchestrating. And before long, Hull FC basically were confined to their own 30 and 40 metre zone. So that's really the tale of the tape. Wakefield get a third try through Mr. Tate. And it really should have been a few more, and my prediction should have been numerically perfect. I think the game probably deserved, with the momentum and the tempo, to have ended 20 points to 10. But Hull FC, for what it's worth, defended valiantly in the final quarter and made sure that it was only ever going to be a one-score game. I thought they were actually tremendously unlucky on the left edge, with about 10 minutes to go, in a flight of desperate offence, as the Americans would say. Caesar sort of jabs one through for Lewis Martin, and you'd have backed him to have outpaced Rourke, but the grubber didn't quite sit up for him and essentially just beavered away to the touchline, which gave Wakefield head and feed on Hull FC's 30. You can see a scenario in which Martin takes possession of that ball, runs in, and then all the pints of Tetley are thrown in the air, and all's fine. But I have a question for Hull FC fans. Are you happy with Tom Briscoe on the wing? If you're supposed to be a big club with a deep roster and an embarrassing amount of players to pick from, are you really happy with Tom Briscoe on the wing? A man who is visibly greying, a man who should really be in his deck chair on the veranda, slowly slotting olives into his mouth and dandling his grandchildren on his knee. Are you really happy that he's still in there? I mean, 10 years ago, of course, he was banging in 5 tries at Wembley against Rovers, but now he seems to be not threatening, to say the least. So yeah, I hardly think that he is the ideal option, and yet he's still in the squad. So Hull FC have played 4 matches, and they've only won 1. And they have played, I think, 3 teams who are not really going to trouble the top 4 this season. And so you can argue it only gets harder from here. From a Wakefield's perspective, as I say, Truman looked troublesome. And there was a bloke, what's his name? I'm just going to turn my notes around. Tavaga, who had the sort of what you might term the Houghton band around his head. He was playing in the forward pack, and he never missed a tackle from marker. He brought everyone down in front of him and was also a menace with ball in hand. John Asiata is excellent and will make a big difference, and nearly every Hull FC point in 2026 will come through him. But I have some questions about his longevity in the side and whether he'll pick up an injury in later rounds. But I also have questions about how long he plays. I know Elliot Minchella occasionally has a 5 or 10 minute break for orange juice and a few bourbons on the side, but Asiata seemed to be off for upwards of half an hour last night. And for a loose forward, for a ball-handling loose forward, that ain't enough, folks, I'm afraid. And so his fitness levels need to step up. Sam Lasoni is just a laughable figure. Fatty, lose some bloody weight. Fatty, use a smaller plate. He is too big for rugby league, I'm afraid. He comes on and widens the eyes for 5 or 10 minutes and takes in two big runs and looks to be running full lengthers. And then before long, his hands are on his head. He is knackered and can be relied upon to do nothing. Just another typical Hull FC signing who steals headlines, who is broad and is marauding and yet is ultimately useless. As I say, he's 2 stone, 3 stone overweight, and you can see just by the belly that he is not fit to be in the side. But there we go. This review hasn't gone as I would have liked it to have. I had all sorts of phrases in my head, all sorts of insults to throw, all sorts of barbs to let loose, and yet none of them have come to my head whilst I extemporaneously plan. But there we go. Hull FC are down in the gutters again. Lord knows what the future holds for them. But I, as a Robin who has suffered the last few weeks, as Hull KR have continually failed as well, besides the Brisbane match. As a Hull KR fan, that was soothing, that was therapeutic, that was a serum, an antioxidant, a niacinamide for the soul. And if Hull FC could keep losing, that would be great. John Cartwright is utterly uninspiring in his post-match remarks. There's no wonder they can't get up for the game. Cade Cust with his cartoonishly wonky ears was no good when he came on at Hooker. I do not get the hype around Amir Bourouh. A few scurries from Hooker, but nothing compared to a Jez Litten or a Edwin Apape or something. Hull FC are going to look for another replacement. Davy Litten must be moved from fullback because he simply cannot catch in that position. I thought actually Brad Fash had a good game, much as I would like to dunk on him, as the Americans would say. I thought he didn't miss many tackles and he played for longer than usual and looked to have the bit between his teeth more. Again, if Hull FC were a better and more clinical side, they'd have nicked one last night. They'd have jagged one, but they weren't able to, and so they sit well down. And I know that Rovers sit well down, and it would be hypocritical to spit at them too sharply. But I'm a material boy in a material world, and I react to that which has just happened. I am a master of short-term thinking. So there we go. I'll stop talking now. That was my very, very brief review of Wakefield versus Hull FC. And I'll probably see you tomorrow for a full-fledged preview of Hull KR versus Huddersfield, or maybe a reaction if something mad happens between the Lee Leopards and Catalans, or St Helens and Bradford. Who knows? But yes. The big club are hitting their snooze alarm once more. They are still pushing the Zeds out. They are still prostrate. They are still cuddled in the duvet. They are still the sleeping giants, and they'll be troubling silverware cabinets no time soon. So yeah, that was my review of Wakefield and Hull FC. Thank you ever so much for watching, folks. Let them sleep ever the more. Let them be ever the more somnambulant throughout the season. Somnambulant is a posh word for sleepwalking for those concerned. Yes, let them, let them sleep evermore. So yes, thank you ever so much for watching, folks. Let me know what you thought of the match down below. I am grinning from ear to ear, and shall continue so until probably until Sunday, when I become very, very nervous. So there we go. Thank you ever so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.